Marcus Jackson, a 16-year-old honor student, sits frozen in first class as the flight attendant's hand leaves a stinging mark on his cheek. Blood trickles from his lip as passengers gasp in shock. Whispers of, "He deserved it," from nearby. Passengers fill the cabin. Marcus's trembling fingers reach for his phone to call his father. Flight attendant Veronica Palmer smirks, unaware of who Marcus's father is. Caption on Marcus's phone: "Dad, CEO Dominion Airlines, direct line." Flight suddenly diverts from its destination without explanation. Would powerful connections be enough to fight a system designed to fail him? Before we continue this shocking story of injustice at 30,000 feet, drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from, and if you believe everyone deserves fair treatment regardless of their skin color, hit that like and subscribe button to stay updated on more true stories of courage in the face of discrimination. 16-year-old Marcus Jackson settled into his first-class seat on Dominion Airlines Flight 2187 from Atlanta to San Francisco. Most passengers would never guess that this unassuming black teenager was the son of Tyler Jackson, the powerful CEO of Skyline International, Dominion's biggest competitor. Marcus wasn't flying on his father's airline for a specific reason. His father had asked him to experience their competitor's service firsthand, gathering insights that might help Skyline improve its own offerings. Marcus wasn't just any CEO's son. He was a brilliant student headed to the National STEM Innovation Challenge in San Francisco, where his groundbreaking research on algorithmic bias in facial recognition technology had earned him a finalist spot. Dressed in a simple navy button-down and khakis, he kept his identity quiet, politely declining when the check-in agent asked if he wanted to mention any special status. "I'll just observe like any other passenger," he had told his father on the drive to the airport. "That's how we'll get the most honest data." Tyler had nodded, pride evident in his eyes. "That's my boy, always thinking like a true executive." The first sign of trouble came shortly after takeoff. While the flight attendants moved efficiently through the cabin serving drinks, Marcus noticed something odd. Flight attendant Veronica Palmer, a stern-faced woman with platinum blonde hair pulled into a tight bun, seemed to be skipping him. "Excuse me," Marcus said politely as she passed his row for the third time. "Could I please have some water?" Veronica's eyes barely flicked in his direction. "I'll get to you when I can," she replied curtly, immediately turning to the white businessman across the aisle. "Sir, would you like another scotch?" Marcus waited patiently, pulling out his research notes to review. 20 minutes passed. The poor drink cart had completed its rounds and still, no water. He spotted Veronica chatting with another flight attendant near the galley. "Excuse me," he tried again, raising his hand slightly. "I still haven't received any water." Veronica turned, her lips tightening. "We're very busy. You'll have to wait." "But you've served everyone else," Marcus pointed out quietly. "Listen," she hissed, leaning closer. "Some people need to learn their place. First class or not, you don't get to make demands." Marcus blinked in surprise at the hostility. Glancing around, he noticed two other black passengers in the economy section being similarly ignored. One elderly man had been trying to get a flight attendant's attention for several minutes. Discreetly, Marcus took out his phone and began recording, making it appear as though he was simply texting. He documented how Veronica and another flight attendant consistently served white passengers promptly while making black passengers wait. The pattern was unmistakable. As the flight progressed, the microaggressions escalated. When distributing warm towels, Veronica practically threw Marcus's at him without making eye contact. When collecting trash, she skipped his row entirely, forcing him to hold his empty cup for over an hour. The first major confrontation came when turbulence hit about 2 hours into the flight. The plane jolted suddenly, causing Veronica to stumble slightly as she carried a tray of coffee cups. Marcus watched in disbelief as she seemed to deliberately tilt the tray, sending scalding coffee cascading onto his lap. "Oh my goodness," she exclaimed with exaggerated concern that didn't reach her eyes. "How clumsy of you to bump into me during turbulence." Marcus jumped up, coffee soaking through his khakis. "I didn't move," he protested, wincing from the burn. "You poured that on me deliberately." "Are you accusing me of something?" Veronica's voice rose, drawing attention from nearby passengers. I'm just trying to do my job." The white businessman across the aisle shook his head. "Kid, it was clearly an accident. Don't make a scene." Marcus stood there, coffee dripping from his clothes, seeing the smirk hidden behind Veronica's mask of professional concern. In that moment, he realized this was about much more than poor service. This was about power, prejudice, and the assumption that he wouldn't fight back. Little did Veronica Palmer know, fighting systematic injustice was exactly what Marcus Jackson had been trained to do his entire life. "I need to speak with the chief flight attendant," Marcus stated firmly, still standing with coffee-soaked pants clinging uncomfortably to his legs. The burning sensation on his thighs intensified with each passing second. Veronica Palmer's professional mask slipped further, revealing a flash of contempt. "You can speak with me. I don't appreciate your tone or your accusations." "This wasn't an accident," Marcus replied evenly, holding up his phone. "And I have video evidence of how you've been treating me and other black passengers since takeoff." Something dangerous flickered in Veronica's eyes. "Give me that phone. Recording crew members is against airline policy." "Actually, it's not," Marcus countered, having researched passenger rights for a school project last semester. "Federal regulations protect passengers' right to document their experiences." The white businessman from across the aisle, Gerald Thompson, a silver-haired executive type in an expensive suit, stood up. "The boy's being disruptive," he announced loudly. "He was thrashing around during turbulence and knocked the coffee out of her hand. I saw it." Marcus stared at the man in disbelief. "That's not what happened at all." "He threatened me earlier too," Veronica added smoothly, building on the false narrative. "Said he'd make sure I lost my job if I didn't give him special treatment." "That's a complete lie," Marcus protested, looking around for support. Most passengers averted their eyes, unwilling to get involved. The injustice of the situation hit him like a physical blow. Veronica lunged forward unexpectedly, grabbing for Marcus's phone. "Airline policy requires me to confiscate any recording devices used inappropriately." Marcus instinctively pulled back, protecting his evidence. "Don't touch my property." What happened next occurred so quickly that several passengers gasped. As Marcus pulled his phone away, Veronica Palmer swung her open palm and slapped him hard across the face, her ring cutting his lip. The sound of the slap echoed through the cabin. Blood trickled from Marcus's split lip. Stunned silence fell over the first-class section. "He tried to assault me!" Veronica shrieked, stepping back with theatrical fear. "I was defending myself!" A security officer named Curtis Benson rushed forward from the back of the plane. Without asking a single question, he immediately grabbed Marcus by the arm. "Sit down and stay there," he ordered. "We'll have restraints ready if you make another move." "She hit me." Marcus touched his bleeding lip in shock. "I didn't do anything." "I saw the whole thing," Gerald Thompson interjected again. "The boy was aggressive. The flight attendant was defending herself." Curtis Benson nodded, not even bothering to question this version of events. "If you cause any more trouble, you'll be restrained for the remainder of the flight and arrested upon landing. Understood?" Most passengers remained silent, eyes averted, pretending not to see the blatant injustice unfolding. But from a few rows back, an Asian American woman stood up. "That's not what happened," she stated firmly. "I'm Dr. Michelle Lin, and I witnessed everything. The flight attendant struck this young man without provocation after deliberately spilling coffee on him." Veronica's eyes narrowed at Dr. Lin. "Please return to your seat, ma'am. This doesn't concern you." "Injustice concerns everyone," Dr. Lin replied. But another flight attendant was already ushering her back to her seat. With shaking hands, Marcus pulled out his phone again, turning slightly away from the watchful eyes of Curtis Benson. He quickly hit his father's direct number, keeping his voice low. "Dad," he whispered, "I need help." Did you see how quickly the situation escalated based on false accusations? Comment number 1 if you believe Marcus should have immediately revealed his father's identity, or number 2 if you think he was right to handle it quietly. If you've ever witnessed discrimination and stood up like Dr. Lin did, hit that like button to show your support for those brave enough to speak truth to power. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that expose everyday injustices. What powers would Tyler Jackson bring to bear when he discovered his son had been assaulted? And would Veronica Palmer's smirk disappear when she learned exactly who she had messed with? Let's continue this shocking true story. Tyler Jackson was reviewing quarterly projections when his secure line rang. Few people had this number, and fewer still would use it unless the matter was urgent. "This is Tyler," he answered, still scanning the financial reports on his screen. "Dad," came his son's whispered voice, tension evident in every syllable. "I need help." Tyler immediately sat upright, reports forgotten. "Marcus, what's wrong?" As Marcus quietly recounted the events, from the deliberate coffee spill to the slap that left him bleeding, Tyler's expression transformed from concern to controlled fury. A former Air Force pilot before entering the corporate world, Tyler Jackson was known for his ability to remain calm in crisis, but hearing his son's voice shake with the indignity of what he'd experienced tested those limits. "They're threatening to restrain me, Dad. The security officer won't listen. They don't know who I am. But even if they did, nobody should be treated this way." "What flight are you on, son?" Tyler asked, his voice deadly calm. "Dominion 2187, Atlanta to San Francisco." "Stay calm. Document everything. I'm handling this. Now." Tyler ended the call and immediately set a complex machine in motion. First, he called the FAA's direct line, leveraging relationships built over 20 years in the industry. Next came air traffic control. Finally, he reached out to his counterpart at Dominion Airlines, board chairman Lawrence Fisher, bypassing CEO Charles Wellington entirely. "Lawrence, this is Tyler Jackson. Your flight attendant just assaulted my 16-year-old son on Dominion 2187. I've already spoken with the FAA. You have exactly 60 seconds to make this right before I escalate. Further, aboard Flight 2187, Captain Joseph Reynolds was puzzled by the sudden communication from headquarters. The message on his secure channel was cryptic, but unmistakable. Flight 2187, divert immediately to Knoxville. Site mechanical concerns. Priority. Landing authorized. Await further instructions upon arrival. Knoxville. We're already halfway to Denver," First Officer Andrea Mitchell questioned. Captain Reynolds shrugged. "Orders from the top. Must be something serious." He made the announcement to the confused passengers. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to a potential mechanical issue, we'll be making an unscheduled landing in Knoxville. We apologize for any inconvenience." In the cabin, confusion reigned. Veronica Palmer received an urgent message on her crew phone and went pale. She hurried to the galley where she frantically whispered to her colleagues, "The kid in 3A, does anyone know who he is?" Junior flight attendant Emma Rodriguez checked the manifest on her tablet. "Marcus Jackson. Let me see. Wait, Jackson. As in Tyler Jackson's son? The CEO of Skyline International?" "That's impossible," Veronica hissed, but panic was setting in. Why would he be flying Dominion? "Probably corporate espionage," Curtis Benson suggested, joining the huddle. "But that doesn't change anything. He was being disruptive." Captain Reynolds emerged from the cockpit, his face grave. "Veronica Palmer, a word." He pulled her aside, speaking in hushed tones. "Headquarters just informed me that the passenger you struck is the son of Tyler Jackson. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Veronica's face drained of color. "Captain, he was being disruptive. Thompson in 3B will back me up." "I don't care if the Pope backs you up," Reynolds hissed. "Jackson has already contacted the FAA. We're being met by authorities in Knoxville." The captain approached Marcus, his demeanor completely transformed. "Mr. Jackson, on behalf of Dominion Airlines, I want to extend our sincerest apologies. Can I offer you anything? Perhaps move you to our private crew rest area for the remainder of the flight?" Marcus wiped the dried blood from his lip. "No, thank you, Captain. I don't want special treatment. I want the same respect every passenger deserves, regardless of who their parents are." Meanwhile, Veronica Palmer moved through the cabin, whispering urgently to passengers who had witnessed the incident. "There's been a misunderstanding. If anyone asks, the boy was being aggressive, right? You saw how he lunged for me?" Most passengers looked uncomfortable, but Gerald Thompson nodded enthusiastically. I'll back you up. These entitled kids need to learn respect. Dr. Michelle Lin watched this witness tampering with disgust, discreetly recording it on her own phone. As the plane began its descent into Knoxville, Marcus looked out the window to see multiple police vehicles and what appeared to be federal agents waiting on the tarmac. His hand touched his swollen lip, and for the first time since the confrontation began, he allowed himself a small, grim smile. The plane touched down smoothly, but instead of proceeding to a gate, it taxied to a remote area of the airport where the waiting authorities immediately surrounded it. Captain Reynolds' voice came over the intercom, strained and formal. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've been instructed to remain in position. Please stay seated with your seatbelts fastened until further notice." Curtis Benson approached Marcus with a completely different attitude. "Sir, I want to apologize for the misunderstanding earlier. If there's anything I can do..." Marcus met his gaze steadily. "You can start by treating everyone equally regardless of who you think they are or what they look like." The cabin door opened, and a team of federal agents boarded the aircraft, led by a stern-faced woman who identified herself as FAA Inspector Gloria Washington. "Captain Reynolds, Ms. Palmer, Mr. Benson, and all active crew members," she announced. "You are temporarily relieved of duty pending investigation. Please, gather your personal items and exit the aircraft for questioning." The scene at Knoxville's McGee-Tyson Airport quickly transformed into something out of a high-stakes thriller. Federal agents escorted the entire flight crew from the aircraft while additional officers boarded to take passenger statements. Inspector Washington established a temporary command center in an empty gate area where shocked crew members were separated for individual questioning. Veronica Palmer's typical confidence evaporated as she was led away. "This is ridiculous," she protested. "You can't detain us like this over a disciplinary issue with a disruptive passenger." "Assault of a minor is a federal offense, Ms. Palmer," Inspector Washington replied coldly. "And witness tampering adds another charge." Outside the airport, news vans began arriving with remarkable speed. Somehow, the story had leaked, and the media smelled blood in the water. Local stations broke into regular programming with breaking news alerts. Entire flight crew detained after alleged assault on teenager. Social media exploded even faster. A passenger in economy had captured video of the aftermath of the slap, including Marcus's bloodied lip, and uploaded it before the plane even landed. The hashtag #tortured justice for Marcus was trending within 30 minutes. Dominion Airline's PR team scrambled to contain the situation, issuing a hasty statement. "We are aware of an incident aboard Flight 2187. We take all passenger concerns seriously and are cooperating with authorities. The safety and dignity of our passengers remain our highest priority." Inside the makeshift interrogation rooms, the stories began to diverge dramatically. Veronica Palmer doubled down on her narrative. "This is clearly a setup," she insisted, to the investigators. "Tyler Jackson sent his son on our airline to create an incident. It's corporate sabotage, plain and simple." "And the blood on his face?" the investigator asked. "He did that to himself after I defended myself from his aggression," she claimed. Gerald Thompson, the businessman who had supported Veronica's version of events, found himself in an uncomfortable position when confronted with video evidence from multiple passengers. "Well, from my angle, it looked like... that is to say," he stammered before finally admitting, "I may have misinterpreted what I saw." Meanwhile, Dr. Michelle Lin provided investigators with her own footage, including Veronica's attempts to influence witnesses after the fact. Her reward for this honesty was immediate. As she gave her statement, her phone buzzed with an email from her hospital administration. "Due to concerns about unprofessional conduct during your travel, your scheduled presentations at the medical conference have been canceled pending review." She stared at her phone in disbelief. Someone had reached out to her employers that quickly. The message was clear. Speaking up had consequences. Outside in the main terminal, a sleek private jet touched down, and Tyler Jackson emerged, flanked by his legal team. Unlike the chaotic energy of the media circus, Tyler projected calm, controlled authority. He didn't run or shout. He moved with purpose, dressed impeccably in a charcoal suit that radiated power without ostentation. "Mr. Jackson," reporters called out. "Is it true your son was assaulted on a Dominion flight?" Tyler paused briefly. "My son, like any passenger, deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. Today he wasn't. The evidence will speak for itself." Inside, Marcus was being treated by airport medical staff who documented his injuries thoroughly. Photos of his bruised face and cut lip quickly found their way online, further fueling public outrage. When father and son reunited in a private airport lounge, Tyler embraced Marcus tightly before examining his face with concern. "I'm okay, Dad," Marcus assured him. "But this isn't just about me. The other black passengers were being treated poorly too. This is systematic." Tyler nodded, gravely. "I know, son. And that's exactly why we can't let this slide." What neither of them realized in that moment was that Dominion Airline CEO Charles Wellington had already landed in his own private jet on the other side of the airport, and he had come prepared for war. As evening fell, what had begun as a simple case of assault on an aircraft had mushroomed into a full-blown corporate and media firestorm. The story dominated evening news broadcasts nationwide. The teenage son of airline CEO Tyler Jackson was allegedly assaulted by a Dominion Airlines flight attendant today, leading to the unprecedented detention of an entire flight crew. Sources say the incident may reveal a pattern of discriminatory behavior at the airline. Dominion stock has already fallen 8% in after-hours trading as investors react to the developing scandal. But behind the headlines, darker forces were already moving to control the narrative and protect powerful interests, regardless of the truth. The morning after the incident brought revelations that shook both the Jackson family and the airline industry. While Marcus rested in a hotel suite, Tyler and his legal team dove into Veronica Palmer's employment history, uncovering a disturbing pattern. This wasn't her first incident, Tyler's lead attorney Simone Washington explained as she spread documents across the conference table. Palmer has had 7 discrimination complaints filed against her in the past 3 years, all by passengers of color. Tyler reviewed the documents, his expression darkening, and all of them buried by Dominion's HR department. "Exactly," Simone confirmed. "Not one resulted in disciplinary action. The standard response was insufficient evidence or passenger misunderstanding." As the investigation deepened, a junior IT specialist on Tyler's team made an even more shocking discovery. An internal Dominion Airlines training document titled "Passenger Profiling for Premium Service Optimization." "You need to see this, sir," the specialist said, handing Tyler a tablet. The document outlined procedures for identifying passengers who maximize revenue potential versus those who present efficiency challenges. While carefully avoiding explicitly racial language, the coded terminology and example scenarios made the intent unmistakable. Black passengers were to be given minimal service to prioritize attention for white customers. "This is systemic," Marcus observed, having joined his father despite his still swollen face. "It's not just Veronica Palmer, it's policy." Tyler nodded grimly. "With this evidence, justice will be served." That confidence was short-lived. As Tyler prepared to share their findings with federal investigators, his security chief interrupted with troubling news. "Sir, the local police chief, Robert Whitfield, just took over jurisdiction from the FAA." "On what grounds?" Tyler demanded. "He's claiming the incident occurred in local airspace and involves simple assault, not a federal matter." A quick background check revealed the connection. Robert Whitfield had been college roommates with Charles Wellington, Dominion's CEO. They remained close friends, with Whitfield receiving generous donations for his department from Wellington's family foundation. The shift in jurisdiction brought immediate changes. Evidence collected from passengers' phones was suddenly corrupted or accidentally deleted during transfer. Dr. Lynn's video mysteriously fragmented into unplayable segments. The official statements from crew members were amended to present a unified front against Marcus. Most disturbing was the treatment of Marcus himself. Police questioned him for hours without his father present, despite Tyler's objections. "Why? Were you on a Dominion flight when your father runs a competing airline?" they pressed repeatedly. Were you attempting to provoke an incident for corporate gain? When Marcus finally emerged from questioning, his eyes reflected a harsh realization. Dad, they're not investigating what happened to me. They're investigating me. Behind this swift counter-offensive stood Charles Wellington, Dominion's CEO. From his wood-paneled office at corporate headquarters, he orchestrated each move with calculated precision. Wellington wasn't just protecting his airline, he was sending a message to Tyler Jackson. Jackson thinks his money and connections can touch us? Wellington remarked to his executive team. Let's show him how real power works. Would you remain silent if you witnessed officials corrupting evidence to protect powerful interests? Comment number 1, if you believe the Jacksons should go public with everything immediately, or number 2, if you think they should gather more evidence first. If you've ever seen justice delayed or denied because of connections between authorities and influential people, hit that like button to stand against corruption. And make sure you're subscribed to see how this explosive battle between corporate titans unfolds. What shadowy alliances had Charles Wellington built to wield such influence? And how would the Jackson family fight back against a system where even the authorities seemed compromised? The truth was about to get much darker. Charles Wellington stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, surveying Atlanta like a general overlooking his battlefield. At 63, Wellington represented old money and older attitudes, his family's airline empire, built through connections that predated civil rights legislation. The Jackson situation requires immediate containment, he told his crisis management team. I want a complete narrative reversal within 24 hours. Wellington's counteroffensive began with a media blitz. By afternoon, carefully edited, video clips appeared on news sites, showing only Marcus's reaction after the coffee was spilled, making it appear as though he had lashed out unprovoked. Anonymous insider sources fed stories to friendly journalists, suggesting the teenager had a history of entitlement issues. Tyler Jackson's son. Troubled teen or corporate spy? Read one headline. Industry experts question. Timing of airline incident, proclaimed another. Simultaneously, regulatory agencies began investigating Skyline International with unusual vigor. The FAA announced a routine safety audit of all Skyline flights. The SEC initiated a probe into potential reporting irregularities in Skyline's quarterly filings. The Department of Transportation requested clarification on Skyline's accessibility accommodations for disabled passengers. Tyler recognized the coordinated attack immediately. Wellington's calling in favors from every corner, he told his executive team. This is about more than one incident now. He's trying to bury us. The situation worsened that evening when Tyler's chief information officer burst into his office. Sir, we're under cyber attack. Someone's breached our main servers. What are they after? Tyler demanded. Everything. Passenger data, financial records, internal communications. They're copying it all. Despite immediate countermeasures, the damage was done. Confidential emails between Tyler and his board discussing potential safety concerns on older aircraft were leaked selectively to the press, stripped of context to make Skyline appear negligent. Meanwhile, those who had supported Marcus faced personal consequences. Dr. Michelle Lynn received notice that she was terminated from her prestigious hospital position for unprofessional conduct reflecting poorly on the institution. The real reason became clear when she learned her hospital had recently received a multi-million-dollar donation from Wellington's family foundation. At Marcus's elite private school, he returned to find threatening notes in his locker. Corporate spy, and worse slurs were scrawled across his books. The school administration seemed oddly reluctant to investigate, the headmaster suggesting that perhaps Marcus should take some time off until things settle down. That evening, as threats mounted from all directions, Tyler appeared ready to concede. Maybe we should settle this privately, he suggested during a family dinner at their heavily guarded home. I can't risk the company and the livelihoods of thousands of employees over this. Marcus looked at his father in disbelief. Dad, this isn't just about me anymore. It's about every person who's been mistreated by Dominion and stayed silent because they didn't have our resources to fight back. If we give up, Wellington wins and nothing changes. The conviction in his son's voice rekindled Tyler's resolve. "You're right. Wellington wants us to back down. That's exactly why we can't." Hope arrived unexpectedly the next morning in the form of Emma Rodriguez, the junior flight attendant from the Dominion flight. She had contacted Tyler's office requesting an urgent meeting. "I can't be seen with you publicly," she explained when they met at a discreet location. "But I've been documenting Dominion's discriminatory practices for months." She handed over a flash drive. "Internal emails, training materials, even directives from Wellington himself about passenger prioritization. They specifically instruct crew to minimize service to passengers of color." "Why are you doing this?" Marcus asked her. "You could lose your job." Emma's eyes hardened. "I joined the airline industry to serve people with dignity. What Dominion is doing violates everything I believe in. And what they did to you?" She shook her head. "It wasn't the first time, but maybe we can make it the last." Armed with Emma's evidence, Tyler and Marcus launched their counterattack. First, they engaged a respected civil rights organization to file a class action discrimination suit against Dominion. Then, Tyler used his industry connections to ensure a proper federal investigation resumed, beyond Whitfield's influence. Marcus, despite the personal attacks, became the public face of a new organization, Equal Skies, dedicated to combating discrimination in air travel. His articulate interviews and composed demeanor in the face of hostility won public support. Social media campaigns highlighting others' similar experiences with Dominion went viral. The tide seemed to be turning. Dominion's stock price fell steadily as more passengers shared their stories. Federal investigators announced expanded inquiries into the airline's practices. Charles Wellington disappeared from public view, and rumors circulated about an emergency board meeting to discuss his leadership. For a brief moment, the Jackson family allowed themselves to believe justice might prevail. They celebrated at home, Emma Rodriguez joining them as an honored guest, along with Dr. Lin, who had found a new position at a more prestigious hospital. "Wellington's gone silent," Tyler noted. "The board may force him out to save the company." "We did it, Dad," Marcus said. "We stood up and it mattered." Neither noticed the unmarked van parked 3 blocks away, where Wellington's private security team monitored their every move and conversation through advanced surveillance equipment. Nor did they know that Wellington hadn't retreated at all. He had merely moved to his private estate in rural Georgia to execute the most devastating phase of his plan. "They think they've won," Wellington told his inner circle. "Now we show them what real power looks like." In the pre-dawn darkness, Tyler and Marcus Jackson worked at the dining table of their heavily secured home, developing the next phase of their strategy. "We need to broaden the coalition," Marcus suggested, organizing statements from former Dominion employees who had come forward after Emma Rodriguez's brave stand. "This isn't just about airlines, but systematic discrimination across transportation sectors." Tyler nodded approvingly. "Think bigger, son. That's how meaningful change happens." Emma Rodriguez joined their early morning strategy session via secure video link. "I've organized the emails chronologically," she explained. "The most damning ones show direct orders from Wellington to implement the profiling system 3 years ago, disguised as customer service optimization." The evidence she had provided was explosive. Internal Dominion emails explicitly directed staff to provide expedited service for premium demographic travelers and efficiency-focused service for diversity passengers. One training document even included a point system for prioritizing passenger requests based on factors that clearly correlated with race and apparent wealth. Tyler used his industry connections to ensure the Department of Transportation launched a proper investigation beyond local influence. Within days, federal investigators interviewed dozens of current and former Dominion employees. Meanwhile, Marcus became increasingly prominent as Equal Skies' spokesman. His composed, articulate interviews describing the incident and broader pattern of discrimination resonated with viewers. His youth and eloquence, combined with his obvious integrity, made him a compelling advocate. The bruises on his face might have faded, but the power of his testimony only grew stronger. "This isn't about one flight attendant or one airline," he explained on a national morning show. "It's about recognizing that every passenger deserves equal dignity, regardless of their appearance or background." Public opinion shifted dramatically. Hashtags like Wammer boycott Dominion and a fly equal gained traction. Dominion's stock fell 15% in a week as corporate clients began switching to competitors, citing concerns about associating their brands with discrimination allegations. Wellington has gone completely silent, Tyler observed during a meeting with his legal team. No public statements, no counter-narratives. That's not like him. Maybe he recognizes he's losing, Simone suggested hopefully. Tyler shook his head. Men like Wellington don't just accept defeat. This silence worries me. His concern proved justified when Charles Wellington personally approached him during an industry conference that both were attending against their team's advice. Wellington cornered Tyler in a private moment between sessions. Though in his 60s, the older CEO projected physical intimidation, towering over Tyler with cold, calculating eyes. "You should have settled for an apology and moved on, Jackson," Wellington said quietly. "Now you've made this personal." "Your employee assaulted my son," Tyler replied evenly, "and your company has systematically discriminated against passengers of color. That was your choice, not mine." Wellington smiled thinly. "I've destroyed men more powerful than you for less provocation. Ask yourself if your crusade is worth what it will cost your family." Before Tyler could respond, Wellington handed him a manila envelope and walked away. Inside, Tyler found surveillance photos of his wife Amara entering her medical practice, Marcus boarding his school bus, and even his elderly mother at her nursing home. The message was unmistakable. Wellington had people watching his family's every move. That evening, Amara Jackson discovered a package on her office desk that had bypassed building security. Inside was a child's doll with dark skin, its face mutilated, and a note reading simply, "Equal skies, equal targets." Most disturbing was the news Marcus received the same day. His placement in the National STEM Innovation Challenge had been rescinded due to credible allegations of research misconduct. No details were provided, and appeals were denied. "They're coming after all of us," Tyler realized, as his family gathered in their living room, security teams sweeping the house for surveillance devices. "Wellington is trying to destroy everything we care about." Despite the escalating threats, the Jackson family stood firm. With Emma Rodriguez's evidence and growing public support, it seemed Wellington's reign might truly be coming to an end. Federal investigators announced preliminary findings supporting discrimination claims, and Dominion's board called an emergency meeting to discuss leadership changes. 3 days later, Charles Wellington held a press conference announcing his temporary leave of absence to focus on addressing the allegations. His apparent concession was reported as a victory for the Jacksons and equal skies. That night, the Jackson family allowed themselves a small celebration. "It's not over," Tyler cautioned, "but Wellington stepping aside is huge. The board will likely settle the cases now and implement real changes." What they didn't know was that Wellington had merely executed a tactical retreat. From his secluded estate, he continued directing operations, having left his most loyal subordinate as interim CEO. Wellington hadn't surrendered. He had simply moved to shadowier terrain to launch his most devastating counterattack yet. The next morning, Tyler's phone rang continuously as concerned board members and investors demanded explanations for news they were seeing. Skyline International's stock was in free fall, dropping 30% before trading was temporarily halted. "What the hell is happening?" Tyler demanded of his CFO. "Accusations of massive embezzlement," came the stunned reply. "Someone leaked what appear to be internal documents showing you've diverted over $40 million to offshore accounts over the past 5 years. That's absurd. Those documents must be forgeries." "They look legitimate, sir. They have all the right signatures, account numbers, everything." Similar accusations hit Marcus at school, where administrators presented him with evidence that he had cheated on his award-winning research project using data stolen from another student. The fabricated evidence was meticulous, including fake emails and doctored timestamps. Dr. Lin called with equally disturbing news. "Someone tried to run me off the road this morning," she reported shakily. "A black SUV with tinted windows forced me into a guardrail. When I got out to confront them, they sped away." Most alarming was Emma Rodriguez's sudden disappearance. She had failed to join a scheduled meeting, and attempts to reach her went unanswered. Her apartment showed signs of a hasty departure or worse. By evening, the coordinated attack had thrown the Jacksons' lives into chaos. Skyline International faced an emergency board meeting to discuss Tyler's suspension. Marcus's college acceptances were placed under review. Even Amara found her medical practice under sudden investigation by the state licensing board for billing irregularities. Wellington is trying to erase us, Tyler realized as his family gathered in their home, now feeling more like a fortress, under siege. He's not just attacking our reputations, he's going after our entire future. Marcus, who had shown such composure throughout the ordeal, finally allowed himself a moment of vulnerability. "Dad, I never wanted this to cost our family everything." Tyler embraced his son tightly. "Listen to me. What Wellington doesn't understand is that principles matter more than money or status. You were right to stand up, and I'll never regret supporting you. Some fights are worth any cost." As night fell, the Jackson family faced their darkest hour, their reputations shattered, their futures threatened, and their allies endangered. Wellington's message was clear: cross me, and I will take everything from you. But what the powerful CEO failed to recognize was that in pushing the Jacksons to the edge, he had removed all their reasons for restraint. With nothing left to lose, they were now free to fight by different rules. Dawn broke over Atlanta with shocking financial news. Skyline International's stock had plummeted an additional 20% before trading even opened, as institutional investors scrambled to distance themselves from the corruption allegations. Emergency board meetings had been called, with several directors publicly questioning whether Tyler Jackson should be placed on administrative leave. Tyler arrived at headquarters to find security guards unsure whether to admit him. His executive assistant handed him a stack of resignation letters from key vice presidents. On the lobby television, financial news networks ran continuous coverage of the Skyline International scandal, complete with infographics showing the alleged money transfers to offshore accounts. "The documents are forgeries," Tyler insisted, to his remaining loyal executives. "But they're incredibly sophisticated ones. Whoever created them had access to our internal templates, signature files, even account codes that only top-level management should know." His legal team delivered more bad news. The SEC had opened a formal investigation, and federal prosecutors were reviewing the case for potential criminal charges. His assets might soon be frozen. For Marcus, the situation at school had become unbearable. Anonymous texts circulated showing doctored images of his research presentation with accusations of plagiarism. When he opened his locker, he found it filled with fake money and a note reading, "Like father, like son." Most disturbing was the sudden silence from colleges that had eagerly recruited him just weeks earlier. "It's like Wellington has poisoned every aspect of our lives," Marcus told his mother as she picked him up early from school, unable to face the continuing hostility. Amara Jackson, normally the family optimist, struggled to find encouraging words. That morning, she had received notice that her medical practice was under investigation for systematic billing fraud, and several long-standing patients had already canceled appointments. "Your father and I have faced discrimination before," she finally said, "but never anything this coordinated, this total." The real shock came that afternoon when Tyler received an anonymous tip about a hostile takeover attempt. Wellington had apparently been quietly acquiring Skyline International stock through shell companies for months. With the price now depressed and allies fleeing, he was positioned to gain controlling interest. "He doesn't just want to destroy us," Tyler realized, staring at the evidence. "He wants to own us, to absorb Skyline into Dominion and erase everything we've built." Meanwhile, Dr. Michelle Lin had continued her own investigation, using medical contacts to access flight records of passengers who had filed complaints against Dominion. She discovered a pattern. Wellington's discriminatory policies extended beyond passenger treatment to hiring and promotion practices, vendor selection, even route planning that deliberately underserved predominantly Black communities. "This is bigger than one incident or one airline," she told Tyler during a secure call. Wellington has implemented systematic discrimination across the entire transportation sector where he has influence. I've compiled everything and am sending it securely now." Before she could transmit the files, Dr. Lin's call cut off abruptly. When Tyler tried to call back, there was no answer. 20 minutes later, local news reported a serious accident involving a physician whose car had veered off a bridge in circumstances police called suspicious. That same evening, Tyler received a disturbing voicemail from Emma Rodriguez. Her voice was hushed, fearful. "Mr. Jackson, I found something in Wellington's private server, something he calls the cleansing initiative. It's not just about passenger treatment. It's about—" The message cut off abruptly, followed by sounds of breaking glass and muffled shouting before the line went dead. Repeated attempts to reach Emma failed. Her apartment showed signs of a struggle when police finally conducted a welfare check, but no trace of the young woman was found. The Jacksons retreated to their home that night, the weight of their collapsing world bearing down on them. Tyler's phone buzzed constantly with crisis alerts from his company. Amara received notice that her medical license was under review. Marcus learned that his scholarship to MIT had been rescinded. "Wellington's winning," Tyler admitted, his voice hollow. "He's systematically destroying everything we've built." Marcus, who had maintained remarkable composure throughout the ordeal, retreated to his room. For hours, his parents heard nothing. When he finally emerged, something had changed in his expression. The defeated look was gone, replaced by the focused intensity they recognized from his competition preparations. "Dad, what if we've been fighting the wrong way?" he asked. "Wellington expects us to use legal channels, media appeals, and corporate governance, but he controls those battlefields." "What are you suggesting?" Tyler asked cautiously. "I'm suggesting we use the one advantage he doesn't expect, my technological skills." Marcus opened his laptop to reveal a complex array of code. "I've been developing an algorithm to detect and counteract algorithmic bias. What if we adapt it to set a trap for Wellington?" As his parents listened, Marcus outlined an audacious plan that would either save them or complete their destruction. It would require every ounce of courage they had left and would place them outside the boundaries they had always respected. "It's extremely risky," Tyler acknowledged when Marcus finished. "If it fails, we lose everything." "Dad," Marcus replied quietly, "look around. We've already lost everything. The only question is whether Wellington gets away with it. Have you ever been pushed to the point where playing by the rules no longer seemed possible?" Comment number 1 if you think the Jacksons should stick to legal methods despite the overwhelming odds, or number 2 if you believe extreme circumstances sometimes justify extreme measures. If you've ever witnessed someone powerful seemingly operating above the law, hit that subscribe button to follow this story of a family fighting a corrupt system with the only tools left to them. How far would Marcus go to expose the truth? And what devastating secrets about Wellington's empire would his technological trap uncover? The most shocking revelations were yet to come. For 3 days, Marcus barely left his room, emerging only for essential meals and brief family discussions. His eyes grew red-rimmed from staring at screens, his fingers flying across keyboards as he constructed the most complex algorithm of his young career. His parents provided what support they could, but this was Marcus's battlefield now. "It's ready," he finally announced on the 4th morning, his voice hoarse from lack of sleep. "We need to move quickly before Wellington realizes what we're doing." The plan was elegant in its simplicity, yet brilliant in its execution. Marcus had created what appeared to be a desperate plea from Tyler Jackson to meet and discuss surrender terms. The message, sent through intermediaries Wellington trusted, suggested a private meeting at Wellington's office where Tyler would sign over his controlling interest in Skyline International in exchange for dropping the personal attacks on his family. "Wellington's ego won't let him resist seeing you humiliated in person," Marcus explained. "He'll want to witness your surrender face to face." Tyler nodded grimly. And that's when we spring the trap. Under Marcus's guidance, Tyler prepared meticulously. A seemingly ordinary fountain pen contained a sophisticated recording device. His watch concealed a backup audio system, Most important was the custom software Marcus had developed on a disguised tablet, designed to penetrate Wellington's private server once connected to any device on his network. "Remember," Marcus cautioned, "you need at least 15 minutes of conversation to get everything we need. Keep him talking about what he did to us, why he did it, and who helped him." The meeting was arranged for that evening. Tyler would enter the lion's den alone, while Marcus and Amara monitored everything from a secure location nearby. Charles Wellington greeted Tyler in his penthouse office with undisguised triumph. "Jackson," he said, pouring himself a scotch, without offering one to his visitor, "I'm genuinely surprised you held out this long." "Why did you do this?" Tyler asked, his voice carefully modulated to sound defeated rather than accusatory. "This went far beyond business competition," Wellington laughed, settling into his leather chair. "You really don't understand, do you? You people always think it's personal." "You people?" Tyler echoed, giving Marcus the opening he needed. "Let's not pretend," Wellington replied dismissively. "Skyline International was becoming too influential. Your diversity initiatives, your community programs, your hiring practices, you were changing industry standards, standards that have worked perfectly well for generations." As Wellington spoke, Marcus's program silently infiltrated the network, bypassing security protocols and extracting files from the CEO's private server. "So this was about maintaining the old hierarchy," Tyler said, encouraging Wellington to continue. "Call it what you want," Wellington shrugged. "The incident with your son was fortunate timing. We'd been looking for leverage against you for months." "You orchestrated all of this because of a slap?" Tyler asked incredulously. "The slap was nothing," Wellington waved dismissively, "but it presented an opportunity to implement a contingency plan that was already in place. We have similar protocols for all executives who don't understand their proper place in the industry." In the surveillance van, Marcus watched as his program accessed ever deeper levels of Wellington's secure files. "We're in," he whispered to his mother. "Dad's doing perfectly." Wellington, growing more comfortable with Tyler's apparent submission, became increasingly candid. "Your son should thank me. I've taught him a valuable lesson about how the world really works. Power isn't about being right or just. It's about having the means and will to crush opposition." "Who else is involved?" Tyler asked. This operation was too sophisticated for one company. Wellington smiled coldly. "You think Dominion acted alone? There's a coalition of like-minded executives across transportation, banking, even technology. We've been coordinating for years to maintain certain standards." As he spoke, Marcus's program discovered the motherlode, a folder labeled Coalition Protocols, containing hundreds of documents outlining systematic discrimination practices across multiple industries, with Wellington serving as chairman of this shadow network. Just as they were about to secure the final evidence, Wellington's head of security burst into the office. "Sir, we've detected an unauthorized access to the mainframe. It's coming from this room." Wellington's triumphant expression vanished. His eyes narrowed as he studied Tyler. "You were recording this entire conversation?" "Yes," Tyler admitted calmly. "And much more." Wellington lunged across the desk, grabbing for Tyler's jacket. In the struggle, the tablet fell to the floor, its screen revealing the data transfer in progress. "You fool!" Wellington snarled, calling for security. "I knew about your recording devices. They're being jammed, but you've just committed federal crimes by hacking our system. I'll have you in prison by morning." Armed security personnel surrounded Tyler as Wellington retrieved the tablet. "Did you really think a teenager's programming skills could outmatch my security team? I knew about your son's algorithm weeks ago." Tyler's heart sank as Wellington smirked triumphantly. "Your family is finished, Jackson. When I'm done, your son won't even get into community college." What Wellington didn't realize was that Marcus had anticipated this very scenario. The visible data transfer was merely a decoy. The real program had already completed its work, transmitting everything to secure servers and simultaneously planting untraceable backdoors throughout Wellington's network. As security escorted Tyler roughly from the building, he maintained, his defeated posture giving no indication that despite appearances, Marcus's brilliant trap had worked exactly as planned. The next 48 hours brought the Jackson family to their lowest point. Tyler was detained by Wellington's security team in a private facility outside Atlanta, held incommunicado under the pretext of corporate espionage investigation, while Wellington's legal team prepared formal charges. Marcus and Amara lost contact with Tyler entirely. Their calls went unanswered, their attorneys were stonewalled, and even their well-connected friends in law enforcement claimed their hands were tied in what was being characterized as a complex corporate dispute. "They can't just disappear, Dad," Marcus insisted, pacing their living room, which now felt like a prison. "That's kidnapping. Wellington has apparently convinced authorities that your father committed serious cybercrimes," Amara explained, her voice tight with worry. "They're claiming jurisdiction issues while they sort it out, which gives Wellington time to manufacture whatever evidence he needs." The situation deteriorated further when Dominion Airlines issued a press release announcing that all claims by the Jackson family have been formally withdrawn, alongside a statement supposedly from Tyler Jackson expressing deep regret for unfounded accusations that have damaged the reputation of a fine American company. The financial markets reacted immediately. Dominion stock rebounded while Skyline International continued its free fall. Investment analysts began discussing the likelihood of Skyline being acquired by Dominion in a distressed asset purchase. "Dad would never sign anything like that," Marcus insisted, staring at the statement in disbelief. "It's completely fabricated." Then came the most devastating blow. Wellington's team broadcast an apparent video confession from Tyler, admitting to corporate espionage, fabricating discrimination claims and using his son as a pawn in corporate warfare. The Tyler in the video looked defeated, reading mechanically from what was clearly a prepared statement. "That's not Dad's normal speaking pattern," Marcus noted, studying the video intently. "They've either heavily edited this or used some kind of coercion." Meanwhile, Emma Rodriguez was discovered unconscious in a hotel room registered under a false name. She was hospitalized in serious condition from what authorities called an apparent suicide attempt, though the timing strained credulity. The evidence she had collected was nowhere to be found. Dr. Michelle Lynn, still recovering from her suspicious car accident, received explicit threats against her family. Photos of her children at school arrived with a simple message: "Some accidents can't be survived. Recant everything." The coordinated attack extended to every aspect of the Jacksons' lives. Their home security system mysteriously malfunctioned. Their bank accounts were frozen due to suspicious activity. Longtime friends suddenly became unreachable. It was as if Wellington had erased their entire support system overnight. By the second evening of Tyler's detention, Skyline International's board had called an emergency session in his absence. According to leaked information, they were preparing to accept Wellington's hostile takeover offer to salvage what remained of shareholder value. "Wellington's won," Amara whispered as they watched the financial news announcing the probable acquisition. "He's taken everything." Marcus sat beside his mother on the couch, seemingly in a daze. Then he suddenly stood up, studying the forced video statement from his father playing on repeat across news channels. "Wait," he said, moving closer to the screen. "Look at Dad's tie clip, the way he's adjusting it repeatedly during specific phrases. That's not nervousness." Amara frowned. "What do you mean?" "It's code," Marcus explained, his exhaustion vanishing. "When we were younger, Dad taught me Navy signal codes for emergency situations. He's tapping out a message." For the next hour, Marcus analyzed the video frame by frame, documenting each subtle movement of his father's hands. By midnight, he had decoded the complete message. "Extraction impossible. Data secure. Activate protocol umbrella." "Protocol umbrella?" Amara questioned. Marcus's expression shifted from despair to cautious hope. "It's a contingency plan Dad and I created years ago. A way to release secured information simultaneously to multiple agencies and media outlets if either of us were ever compromised." He hurried to his room, retrieving a laptop they had never previously used, connected to a secure network separate from their home system. The evidence we gathered from Wellington's server was automatically encrypted and stored across multiple secure locations. Dad's telling us it's time to release everything. Will it be enough? Amara asked. Wellington seems to control every lever of power. Not every lever, Marcus replied, fingers flying across the keyboard. Protocol Umbrella bypasses traditional power structures entirely. The evidence goes directly to hundreds of independent journalists, advocacy organizations, and international authorities simultaneously. Once it's out, not even Wellington can contain it. As Marcus worked through the night, Amara used her own connections in the medical community to gather information about Tyler's possible whereabouts. By dawn, they had narrowed it down to 3 potential facilities within 50 miles of Atlanta, where Wellington might be holding him. Meanwhile, from his detention room, Tyler Jackson continued his own resistance. While appearing to cooperate with his captors, he had been systematically gathering evidence of his unlawful detention, memorizing the faces and names of everyone involved, and looking for weaknesses in their security protocols. Wellington, believing victory was assured, prepared to announce the acquisition of Skyline International at a major press conference scheduled for the following morning. His team had crafted a narrative portraying him as a magnanimous industry leader, stepping in to stabilize a troubled competitor for the good of the traveling public. What none of them realized was that Marcus Jackson had just initiated a digital hurricane that would sweep away decades of carefully constructed corruption, discrimination, and abuse of power. Protocol Umbrella wasn't just releasing evidence about one incident or one company. It was exposing an entire shadow network of corporate collusion that had systematically discriminated against minorities across multiple industries for generations. The darkest hour was about to give way to a new dawn. At 4:37 a.m., Marcus Jackson pressed the final key sequence to activate Protocol Umbrella. Immediately, secure servers across 3 continents began releasing encrypted evidence to hundreds of pre-verified recipients. Investigative journalists, civil rights attorneys, regulatory officials, and selected law enforcement agencies known for their integrity. "It's done," he told his mother, slumping back in his chair after 72 sleepless hours. "Now we need to find Dad before Wellington realizes what's happening." Amara had been working her own angles through the night. As a respected physician with connections throughout Atlanta's medical community, she had discreetly inquired about security personnel seeking medical supplies for an off-site corporate retreat. One supply requisition for sedatives stood out, delivered to a remote Dominion Airlines training facility outside the city. "I think I know where they're holding him," she said, showing Marcus the address. "But we can't go alone. Wellington's people are everywhere." As dawn broke, Amara made a call she had been hesitating to make. For years, she had maintained relationships with other executives' spouses, particularly those who, like her, had faced discrimination despite their success. They had formed an unofficial support network, sharing experiences too painful to discuss publicly. "Diane," she said when her call was answered. "It's Amara Jackson. Charles Wellington has kidnapped my husband. I need your help." Diane Reynolds, wife of airline industry pioneer James Reynolds, didn't hesitate. "Tell me what you need." What followed was a remarkable mobilization. By mid-morning, an unexpected alliance had formed. Powerful figures from across the transportation industry who had privately chafed under Wellington's influence for years, but lacked the evidence or courage to challenge him openly. Now, with Protocol Umbrella unleashing damning evidence by the hour, they finally had both. James Reynolds provided his private security team. Tech entrepreneur Sophia Chen offered advanced communication equipment. Former FAA Director William Harmon made calls to federal authorities he trusted implicitly. Within hours, what began as a desperate family's last stand transformed into a coordinated operation. Meanwhile, Protocol Umbrella's impact was spreading like wildfire. Wellington Gate and the Archer Skyline Justice were trending globally. Major news networks interrupted regular programming to report on the explosive revelations. The evidence was undeniable and devastating. Years of communications revealing systematic discrimination, blackmail of officials, and manipulation of regulations to maintain Wellington's power structure. Most damning was the Coalition Protocols folder, which exposed a shadow network of executives across 12 major industries who had coordinated efforts to suppress diversity initiatives, block advancement of minority employees, and undermine businesses led by people of color. By noon, the FBI had launched an official investigation, with agents arriving at Dominion headquarters with search warrants. The SEC suspended trading of both Dominion and Skyline stocks pending investigation. International authorities began freezing assets linked to Wellington's network. At Dominion's headquarters, Charles Wellington received the news of Protocol Umbrella's activation with cold fury. "Find the Jackson boy and shut him down," he ordered his head of security. "And prepare the jet. We may need to expedite our departure." Wellington had maintained escape plans for years, private aircraft fueled and ready, accounts in countries without extradition treaties, new identities prepared for himself and key lieutenants. He had never expected to need them, but had always considered contingencies a mark of proper leadership. As federal agents moved to secure Dominion's offices, Wellington slipped away through a private elevator to the parking garage, where a car waited to take him to the training facility where Tyler was held. If nothing else, the Skyline CEO would make useful leverage. But Wellington wasn't the only one en route to the facility. Guided by Amara's intelligence and supported by their new alliance, Marcus and a team of private security professionals were closing in from another direction. Inside the facility, Tyler Jackson had spent his captivity observing and planning. Though drugged and restrained for interviews, he had managed to palm some of the sedatives rather than swallowing them, gradually building clarity while maintaining the appearance of compliance. When alarms began sounding throughout the facility and security personnel started moving with obvious agitation, Tyler knew something had changed. Through a partially open door, he caught fragments of panicked conversation. "Everything's been leaked. Feds moving in. Wellington wants him moved." Tyler tested his restraints, finding them improperly secured due to his guard's overconfidence. With practiced movements from his military training decades earlier, he worked one hand free, then quickly liberated himself entirely. As Wellington's car sped toward the facility, Veronica Palmer, who had been reassigned there after the flight incident, received orders to prepare Tyler for immediate transport. When she entered his room, she found it empty. "He's loose," she shouted, reaching for her radio. Before she could call for backup, Tyler emerged from behind the door. "Ms. Palmer," he said calmly, "I believe we have unfinished business." Across town, the FBI investigation accelerated as agents discovered a treasure trove of incriminating evidence. Veronica Palmer had turned state's witness, providing detailed accounts of discrimination practices in exchange for leniency. Additional Dominion employees came forward hourly, the dam of fear finally breaking. Most surprisingly, Gerald Thompson, the businessman who had supported Palmer's false claims on the flight, contacted authorities to recant his testimony. "Wellington's people said they'd ruin me if I didn't back their story," he admitted. "I was a coward, and I'm deeply sorry." As federal indictments were being prepared, Wellington arrived at the training facility to find it in chaos. Guards were abandoning their posts as news of federal investigations spread. Tyler Jackson was nowhere to be found. Wellington barricaded, himself in the facility's command center, increasingly desperate. When his private security chief finally reached him, the news was catastrophic. "Sir, the feds have frozen all the escape accounts. The jet has been grounded, and," he hesitated, "the Jackson boys' evidence dump included the contingency plans. They're waiting at every exit route." For the first time in his life, Charles Wellington faced a situation he couldn't control. Decades of carefully accumulated power were evaporating hourly. As he contemplated his rapidly narrowing options, the door to the command center opened. Tyler Jackson walked in, followed by Marcus and Amara, flanked by James Reynolds and federal agents. "It's over, Wellington," Tyler said quietly. Wellington's expression shifted from shock to calculated calm. "Perhaps this particular battle," he conceded, straightening his custom suit jacket. "But you've overlooked something critical." With deliberate movements, he unlocked a secure terminal. "I still control enough levers to cause catastrophic damage. This system contains manipulated evidence implicating dozens of minority-owned businesses in fraud schemes. One command, and it goes to every regulatory agency simultaneously. Your victory destroys countless innocent people. Marcus stepped forward, no longer the frightened teenager from that first-class cabin. I wondered if you'd try something like this. That's why my algorithm didn't just extract data, it located and neutralized your failsafes. Wellington's fingers froze above the keyboard. Those files are now watermarked with creation dates and user credentials, Marcus continued. They don't incriminate anyone except the people who fabricated them, which is documented in detail. For the first time, genuine fear flickered across Wellington's face. You should have just served my son some water when he asked, Tyler said quietly. All of this because you couldn't see him as a human being deserving basic dignity. As federal agents led Wellington away, the magnitude of what the Jackson family had accomplished began to emerge. They hadn't just cleared their names or saved their company. They had exposed a generational system of discrimination that had persisted in the shadows of American business for decades. 6 months after Charles Wellington's arrest, Tyler Jackson stood at a podium in Skyline International's headquarters, addressing a room filled with industry leaders, government officials, and media representatives. Today isn't about one company or one incident, he began. It's about acknowledging a systemic problem and committing to genuine change. The transformation of the airline industry had been swift and comprehensive. Federal investigations into Wellington's coalition had resulted in criminal charges against 37 executives across multiple companies. Dominion Airlines had been placed under court-ordered monitorship, with sweeping changes to leadership and policies. Most significantly, Tyler had leveraged Skyline's recovery to launch the Equitable Skies Initiative, an industry-wide effort to combat discrimination in all aspects of air travel, from hiring practices to passenger treatment. Real change requires more than policies on paper, Tyler continued. It demands vigilance, accountability, and courage from every level of an organization. Marcus, now a freshman at MIT where his admission had been reinstated with a full scholarship and formal apology, had developed standardized metrics for measuring equity in customer service. His algorithm for detecting bias in passenger treatment was being implemented across multiple airlines. For her part, Dr. Michelle Lin had been appointed to head a new Federal Aviation Administration division focused on passenger rights and equitable service standards. Her experiences during the Wellington scandal had transformed her from reluctant witness to powerful advocate. Emma Rodriguez, fully recovered from her ordeal, had been named Skyline's new Director of Cabin Services, implementing training programs that emphasized equal treatment and respect for all passengers. Her courage in coming forward had made her a role model for employees throughout the industry. Even Veronica Palmer's story had found resolution. After serving community service and completing extensive sensitivity training, she had become an unlikely ally, speaking candidly about how corporate culture had encouraged and rewarded discriminatory behavior. Her testimony had proven crucial in several prosecutions. The most surprising development came 3 months after Wellington's conviction, when Dominion Airlines, struggling to survive the scandal and rebuild public trust, faced potential bankruptcy. In a move that stunned the industry, Marcus Jackson, using the settlement funds from his personal lawsuit, purchased a controlling interest in the troubled carrier. Rather than destroy what Wellington built, Marcus explained to skeptical observers, I want to transform it into something that serves all people equally. True justice isn't about revenge, it's about creating the world we wish existed. Under Marcus's guidance, Dominion had begun a remarkable turnaround, implementing the industry's most progressive equity policies and rebuilding its reputation as a champion of inclusive service. 1 year to the day after the original incident, Marcus boarded a Dominion flight from Atlanta to San Francisco. As he settled into his seat, a young black flight attendant approached. Mr. Jackson, she said, her voice filled with emotion. I just wanted to thank you personally. I was rejected by 3 airlines before Dominion's new policies gave me a fair chance. What you and your family did changed everything for people like me. Marcus smiled. What's your name? Zoe Davis, sir. Well, Zoe Davis, remember this moment the next time someone tells you one person can't change an entrenched system. all it takes is the courage to stand up when it would be easier to stay seated. As the flight took off, Marcus looked out the window at the Atlanta skyline receding below. The journey that had begun with a slap had transformed an industry, launched multiple federal investigations into discriminatory practices, and established new standards for equitable treatment. Most importantly, it had shown that systems built on discrimination, no matter how powerful they appeared, could not stand against the determined pursuit of justice. Tyler Jackson had taught his son that leadership wasn't about power, but responsibility. Marcus had proven that even the youngest voice could spark profound change when speaking truth without fear. As Dominion Airlines Flight 2187 climbed through the clouds, its diverse crew serving all passengers with equal respect and dignity, it carried more than travelers to their destinations. It carried the promise that the skies, and the world below, could truly belong equally to everyone. This story illustrates several powerful truths about justice and racial discrimination in modern society. First, it shows how prejudice often operates as a system rather than isolated incidents, with powerful networks maintaining discriminatory practices through informal alliances. Second, it demonstrates that standing up against discrimination requires courage, but also strategic thinking and evidence gathering. Marcus's technological skills and documentation proved crucial in exposing the truth. The narrative highlights how privilege and power can shield wrongdoers, allowing them to weaponize institutions against victims who speak out. Wellington's ability to manipulate media, law enforcement, and regulatory agencies represents how systemic racism persists through institutional control. However, the story also shows that no corrupt system is impenetrable when faced with determined opposition and well-documented evidence. Perhaps most importantly, the conclusion emphasizes that true justice isn't about revenge but transformation. Marcus didn't seek to destroy Wellington's company, but to rebuild it as a model of equity. This reflects a profound understanding that dismantling discriminatory systems requires replacing them with better alternatives, not just punishing individuals. The Jackson family's journey teaches us that speaking truth to power has costs, but silence has greater ones. It reminds us that even small moments of discrimination, like denying someone a glass of water, can reveal deeper, more insidious patterns that demand confrontation for society to progress toward true equality. Has an experience with discrimination ever forced you to make a difficult choice between speaking up or staying silent? Comment below with your story or thoughts on how you would have handled Marcus's situation. If this story resonated with you or someone you know who has faced similar struggles, please hit that like button to help spread awareness about the importance of standing against discrimination in all its forms. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that illuminate social injustices and celebrate those brave enough to fight back. Share this video with someone who needs to understand how discrimination operates in subtle and not so subtle ways in our daily lives. Thank you for joining us for this journey of courage, justice, and transformation. Remember that each of us has the power to create change when we refuse to accept injustice as normal, whether in the skies or on the ground.